Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Gaming with me, Tony Mo, and we're here today with some more Star Citizen, and I'm going to show you how to play with your joysticks. No, what I'm actually going to show you how to do is, I'm just going to give you guys a brief overview of my Gamepad setup, how I run it with the track IR. I don't actually make that many changes to it, so it's really easy for me to just show you guys inside of the actual configuration settings, give you a few quick tips for using the Gamepad, and then we're going to try and do a fast landing at one of these landing pads using that actual setup with the manual landing system. We'll probably crash, we'll probably burn, but hey, you guys know that's actually what you came here to see. That and my infamous track IR head bobbing. It's going to get really bad in the future if you can see my arms waving on screen, because I talk with my arms heavily, and I'd just be waving my hand across the screen right now. It'd be terrible. It'd be really bad. I can't even imagine what it'd be like in a first-person shooter. I'd be that guy standing there with the gun like, hey, what's up, guys? I'd be driving everybody friggin' crazy. Alright, so, before we take off, let's go ahead and take a look at my setup for the Gamepad, mixed in with the track IR here. Now, there's one thing I want to point out immediately is, if you run a Gamepad, the first thing you need to do, this is exactly what you need to do. You should go to your key bindings for the mouse and keyboard, go to Advanced Controls Customization, go down to Targeting, and change the key binding for your gimbal lock to anything that you're not going to click frequently, because the default for it is left alt. A lot of it is left alt tab just about all the time, especially in a game like Star Citizen that crashes, that has frame rate issues. Who doesn't alt tab? I alt tab because I'm using recording software and audio software. Just change it. You'll save yourself a huge headache when you're wondering, why the hell is my right stick, which is supposed to be aiming my gimbaled weapons right now, looking around the cockpit? Just change it as soon as possible. Now, going to our actual key binding setup for the Gamepad, let's go ahead and move over this way, go to Advanced Controls Customization. I've only changed a couple things. Going into Flight View, I removed the ability for the right stick to look around the cockpit, so the right stick is no longer bound to look left, right, and look up, look down. I have track IR, I have no need for this. However, if you don't have track IR, you're probably going to keep this enabled so you can go ahead and use that right stick to look around the cockpit, or use your gimbal weapons, unless you just plan on flying fixed all the time, in which case it won't be an issue for you. Moving down to movement, I've made my left thumbstick my pitch, as well as my roll. So both pitch and roll are on the left thumbstick, and I've moved my yaw to the right thumbstick. Again, with track IR, I've opened up my ability to use the right thumbstick as an actual axis for moving the ship. So it's kind of like a set of first-person shooter controls. I mentioned this before. It works really well for me. Yaw is something that you don't really have to use that excessively in this game. You can choose to use it excessively, but I currently don't. So I find it better to be on an opposite stick, and there's just something comforting about using the right thumbstick to aim like I would in a first-person shooter. It feels natural to me, and it's easy for me to manipulate yaw with a bit more control. And as I said, with roll, we're down that way. Now, if we go ahead and look at our throttle, these are the only other two things that I've actually been messing around with quite a bit. Speaking of, I need to keybind this because I forgot to do so. Squeeze those both together. Alright, so the nice thing about an Xbox controller, or a controller that has digital triggers, is that they can be depressed to a certain amount, right? That's the big benefit of them. That's why playing racing games on the Xbox was always superior to playing them on the PlayStation. You had to use the right stick to accelerate and brake in a Gran Turismo. It was ridiculous. I'm not actually knocking it, but you guys know what I'm saying here. So what I've done is I've changed my throttle up and my throttle down to right and left trigger. However, it hasn't worked as planned, as we'll talk about later. By default, these are set to the bumpers. I only have one primary fire weapon, so I've moved that to the right bumper instead. Those are really the only changes I've made. Everything else is completely default, which is awesome. Now we're going to go ahead and go back quickly and talk about sensitivity, because this is something that I warned you guys about before, and I want to visually show you what I was talking about. All of these sliders here, right? You might be really frustrated with just how high the sensitivity is on your roll or your pitch for flight, and so you think to yourself, I'll just drag this slider over this way. Don't do it. Please, save yourself the trouble, don't do it. You want to know why? We're gonna go ahead and click on this button here that says Edit Curve. This is the curve that has been created by Star Citizen when you launch the game. This is a good curve. Trust me, it may be a little bit too sensitive for your liking, but you know what's even worse? No curve at all. And that's what'll happen if you mess with that sensitivity slider. It's gonna go ahead and give you this straight line. It's gonna be terrible. It's gonna be the worst thing you've ever experienced, and you're gonna be like, what did I do? I only made it worse. If you actually want to lower your sensitivity or raise it, you're gonna need to learn a little bit about how these curves work. To put it simply, if you have a more steep curve, you're gonna get more rapid sensitivity more quickly, and if you have a more curve like this, you know, your sensitivity is going to be delivered in a smoother area. I mean, there's stuff all over the internet about it. I'm not an expert on it, and frankly, I've messed with these curves very little. I'm actually quite happy with where they are, considering every time the game gets updated, everything gets wiped anyways. I'm not going to spend all this time messing with right now. Just know not to mess with that slider, because things, as I said, will get much, much worse. And that's really all I have to talk about for the actual control setup portion of it. It's as simple as that. I haven't really done anything else spectacular. So let's go ahead and take off and fly around a little bit. And I do want to talk a little bit about how things actually function with the controller, because as I said, certain things didn't work as I had hoped. Let's re-enable our G-Safe and our comm stab. So like I said, I switched my acceleration and my deceleration from the bumpers to the triggers, hoping that I would get some sort of incremental acceleration or depression. It doesn't really work that way. This is definitely a part of the game that is still being developed, and I mean, it kind of works. You know, I can kind of get on the throttle and gain speed, but it's not always consistent. It doesn't always feel like I'm applying a throttle. Sometimes it's better than others, but I have to admit the triggers are a huge improvement over the bumpers, which were pretty much just a button press. You kind of just waited, and then all of a sudden you were at full throttle about to crash into the landing pad. So I would recommend the triggers over the bumpers if you're using an Xbox One gamepad, something that has analog triggers like the PlayStation 4, the Xbox One, or the Xbox 360 controller, and I'm sure a plethora of other PC pads out there. Now, everything else applies when using the controller. It's all the same, right? I mean, it's just a matter of getting comfortable with, you know, your role and your different settings. For you, the way that I have my joystick set up, it might not be the greatest choice. You might want to swap that around and go with something else. Again, completely up to you. Let's go ahead and try and pull off a landing here, though, because this is one of the things that changed in 1.1.2, is we now have lowered sensitivity when attempting to land or take off from a landing pad, which is a very good thing, trust me. Alright, so we got landing request up here. Let's go ahead and rotate the ship, land this bad boy up. I braked a little too soon. See, that's the big thing with this landing system, is once you get to zero, right? Once you're above this landing pad and you go ahead and hit zero, like I said, all of those sensitivities, they drop. And they drop big time, which means accelerating or doing anything over this landing pad, it all works very, very slowly. So it's a good thing, because what it means is that you can, you know, develop the skill required. We're gonna go ahead and try it again to, you know, come in and pull off some wicked hot landings. Let's see if we can't make one of them happen. I'm kind of confident in the system and how much it lowers the sensitivity once we get in there, but I can't say I'm confident in my own abilities here. Let's go ahead and engage the landing system again. Request landing on this landing pad once we get close to it. Alright, here we go, here we go, here we go. Start braking, start braking. Boom. Bring her down, bring her down. Not the quickest landing, but probably the smoothest landing I've ever had in this game. Just happened right now, live for you guys. Let's go ahead and get out of this damn ship. So, with 1.1.2, the sensitivity curves are better than they've ever been for all of the controllers. I have messed with my HOTAS. While it's still not my weapon of choice, it does seem to be greatly improved over what the past builds offered, and to me the gamepad is just like dead on now. It's made flying the Gladius hella fun. Using that word again, hella fun, and I've been out here in free roam for like the last week, just screwing around, flying, landing, waiting for 1.1.2, and when it dropped, it was like the greatest thing ever to realize that they recognized everything was just way too sensitive around landing pads, and the tweaks that they've made just make landing an actual enjoyable experience. I mean, you saw that right there. You can come in wicked hot and you can fine-tune that, and I strongly recommend you guys give that a go. And if any of you happen to have small YouTube channels that you run where you just upload random videos and you pull off a sick landing, link it in the comment section below, man. I want to see it, and I'm sure others would like to see it as well. If you guys have any questions for me about my setup with the gamepad, with TrackIR, with anything regarding Star Citizen, as always, feel free to let me know down in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one.
Proximity